Coming up next, the Bookening reads Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Hey everybody, welcome to the Bookening. My name is Nathan. I am your humble and obedient host. I'm joined by Brandon, the Irish Catholic poet, the Catholic Irish poet.
Hey.
Brandon, is there a grammatical rule to the order in which adjectives are stated or put on a page or written down? To my brain, the Irish Catholic poet sounds better than the Catholic Irish poet.
I think a lot of it has to do with just how it sounds.
Just how it sounds. There's not like a regional comes before religion comes before. I sort of remember
it depend on what are you describing.
Right.
Are you describing what kind of Catholic he is or what kind of person he is when you say Irish?
Like the fat Catholic Brandon would mean
that I'm a fat Catholic.
But if we said the Catholic fat Brandon,
then I'm Catholic and I'm also fat.
Right.
Yeah.
So there you go. It matters some there.
Mm-hmm. A little bit.
Yeah.
So you're the Irish Catholic poet?
Yes.
Or the Catholic Irish poet?
Yes. I think Irish Catholic poet makes me sound like I'm that religion Irish Catholic.
Yeah, it does. So we want Catholic Irish poet.
Catholic Irish poet, yeah.
You're Catholic, like you love the Universal Church.
Yes.
And you're Irish.
I am.
You get drunk and you fix the shoes of cobblers.
I do, yes.
That's what all Irish people do, right?
Oh, that's what we do.
Are you actually Irish, Brendan? Is Chastine an Irish name?
Scottish and French.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yep, French Scot.
Well, we've got another man that comes from French lineage.
Yeah?
No, my wife.
Oh, well, we've got a man who's married to a woman who comes from French lineage.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think
Huguenot.
We got a man who's married to a woman who comes from a Huguenot lineage.
Yeah.
And I think you should introduce that man.
He is the pastor. He is a master of reading. His last name is Menzel. His middle name, I was about to say his second name. His middle name is Kyle. And his first name is Jacob, but we call him Jake.
All
to put those together.
Yeah.
We get Jacob Kyle Menzel. The pastor is a master of reading.
Nailed it.
Sweet.
You did a great job on that, Brandon.
Thank you, Nathan. I'm really nervous this episode.
Yeah?
I think we got to do this right.
Well, we would be telling tales out of school if we didn't say we just recorded 25 minutes of nonsense fit only for the pigs behind our paywall.
Yeah. It's pretty funny, though.
It was funny.
It was really funny.
We had fun with it, at least.
Yeah.
I laughed.
We laughed.
Yeah,
we all
I
laughed. By the way, I feel like I should clean up the fact we're not really making swill for the pigs behind our paywall. Our patrons are wonderful people.
Oink away, patrons.
Yeah, oink away, you fat pigs.
Well done, patrons.
Yeah. Do you mean that'll do?
That'll do. That's right. I ruined that joke. That'll do, patrons.
Yeah, the famous moment when Farmer Hog says, "Well done, pig."
That's when he says how he likes his pig syrup. Right?
Well done. Yeah, that's the next scene of the movie.
Get your pig medium rare. That would be disgusting. Don't do
rare.
that unless you want to die.
Ceviche pig.
Now, if you do want to die, though,
yeah,
some raw pig can be pretty delicious.
I'm not even going to ask how you know that.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm thinking undercooked bacon is better than overcooked bacon. When it comes to bacon, you don't want it too crispy, in my humble opinion.
I think bacon's one of the few things that it really depends on your mood.
I think that's true. I think bacon can go any number of ways. But I went through this period where I couldn't eat bacon that was too well done. It would really make me nauseous. When I was about 13 or 14, I developed this aversion to well done bacon. I could only have it when it was soft and chewy.
That is weird.
Then it went away.
Weird.
And
most
feels
people
like it'd be the opposite.
Yeah, most people like their bacon crispy.
Yeah, well, a lot of people voted for Hitler.
That's true.
I don't know if there was a vote for Hitler. I don't know my German history that well. Was there a vote for Hitler?
I think he just kind of took power, right?
Yeah. Well,
I think there actually was a vote for Hitler.
I think there was too. A lot of people could be wrong. Yeah, it would. It does feel counterintuitive. You'd think I would have developed some kind of complex about the rawness of bacon, but
Rawness, chewiness.
but that sort of cindery. I think I had like a bad
Fattiness.
batch of way overdone bacon, and then I just couldn't stand anything that came
Like charred.
charred kind of
that's-
sulfur
that's bad.
tasting.
That's
yeah,
bad.
Yeah.
exactly. It was bad.
Sorry you had to live through that.
Well, speaking of living through things,
Yes.
I lived through the entire process of reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and happy I was to do it because it's a good book. Spoiler alert for my opinion on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And in order to truly appreciate it, we need our contextual Texan, one Brandon Chastain, known Irish poet, to give us some much needed context on the work.
All right. Am I supposed to say yeehaw?
If you want to, sure.
Yeah. Yeehaw.
Mm.
Yeehaw.
A little bit more would be.
Yeehaw.
There we go.
What
Hale and Hardy.
do you do when your yeehaw is lame?
Something about shame.
Brandon, you should be filled with such terrible shame.
Boom.
You should be kicked out of the podcast.
Boom.
And where exactly should he be kicked?
Into some gas.
Boom.
Straight into the mother son.
Boom. Boom. Boom.
I don't mean the mother son like the son of a mother. I mean like our mother, the son.
Yes, we
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
We've all converted to sun worship here.
Oh, yeah. We should probably tell people.
Yeah. The ancient Egyptian.
World's greatest podcast by sun worshippers.
Yeah.
It probably is, to be frank. Well, you guys remember that comic strip, Frank and Ernest?
I remember Ernest.
Oh, to
Scared
be
Stupid.
frank and oh, to be earnest.
Oh, to be frank, oh, to be Ernest. They were always up to something. I remember Scared Stupid. I love those Ernest movies when I was about
They were great.
6 or 7.
What
James
does that have to do with
Varney. Jim
anything?
Varney.
Was that?
What does that have to do with anything?
I don't know. He said he saw Ernest Scared Stupid.
Oh,
Yeah.
Ernest lived right across the river. He used to do local commercials all the time.
Did you ever meet him?
No.
That's too bad.
Yeah, it's sad.
That is sad.
Yeah, but my childhood was a childhood that had a whole bunch of local commercials with
Jim Varney
with Jim Varney in them. Yep.
talking to old Vern,
Talking to Vern.
interrupting Vern in the middle of Vern's day to talk about some product that Ernest was excited about.
Yep. He was talking to Vern about going down to Audubon Chrysler.
Nice.
Yep.
That sounds like good days.
Know what I mean, Vern?
I know what you mean, Vern.
Well, speaking of Audubon and other things that are auto, this book automatically joins the ranks of the books that we've read on the Bookening, because all we have to do is read it and do a podcast about it.
Yes.
And we've got the contextual text in here to
Dude, I don't know if that's funny.
talk about.
We got that contextual text.
I'm sorry, Brandon. I'm a little stir crazy.
Yeah.
It was a long day before we even got in the studio, but we are committed to quality, just like Willy Wonka himself. Nobody comes in and out of the Bookening factory, but great podcast product goes
That's
out to the
right.
world.
We've got our Oompa Loompas who do all the recording and editing for us.
That's right.
Yeah.
And all of our listeners have a golden ticket to quality infotainment beginning like 15 minutes ago or whenever this podcast started, but continuing now as our contextual Texan, Brandon Chastain, tells us about the wonderful work of art that is Roald Dahl's life and
Wow, this is wonderful.
his
Keep going. Nate.
somewhat good book, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Somewhat good.
It's good. It's great. Take it away, Brandon.
Nathan, there's so much to talk about. No, this is a guy that
I've been looking forward to this one. Let me just give a little context to what's that thing? Little baggage to the context.
Yeah.
People like to talk about Roald Dahl. He's one of those people that the whole internet community kind of likes to say, like, he was an anti-Semite, right, man? Roald Dahl was a misogynist, right, man?
people say this.
Yeah, Roald Dahl was dark and like it's sort of like Mr. Rogers was a sniper syndrome kind of stuff. If people can
Wear sweaters to cover his tattoos.
Yeah, if people can find a beloved personality, particularly one in the children's genre of anything, then they like to sidle up to you and tell you how horrible and awful.
Dr. Seuss is a racist.
Dr. Seuss is a racist. We've just found out as we're recording this. So I don't think Roald Dahl has been fully canceled or anything like that, but he's certainly taken his fair share of criticism in recent years.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll let Brandon litigate for us whether that was right or wrong. But I've been looking forward to this context for that very reason.
Really? Well, I think that we should let's talk about him.
Let's talk about it.
Let's do this more like a conversation.
All right.
I don't know if we're going to or not. You're probably just going to listen to me.
Conversation where I go, mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh,
interesting.
So he was born. Guess what year? You guys guess.
1991.
Let's do the closest without going over.
1984.
What? We're doing when he was born or when he died?
1914. We're
You
only
guys
guessing.
realize he's not a baby, right?
We're only guessing. Wait, Roald Dahl's not a baby?
No.
Hey,
He's not Baby
I
Yoda.
was born in 1984. I'm not a baby.
You're not a baby. You're not a baby.
Thanks.
Now who's got egg on his face?
I do, because I just ate this wonderful egg sandwich. And also because I'm a little bit embarrassed. Because Jake's not a baby. You are a big baby though, right, Nathan? But was that on the Patreon?
That's on the Patreon only canceled episode feed.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
That should have... Well, I'm glad we got that out for everybody to hear.
Yeah. References to things you didn't hear.
And people will be proud to know that we did not then start talking about the size of the bottle that Nathan would have to use or the diaper that he usually wears or anything like that.
People will be proud. Yes. There's one thing
you'll be proud
that
of
will
us.
make their hearts swell with pride.
Those guys didn't do that. All right.
I'm so proud of them.
So you
Nice
said
having you.
1914 when you were given your serious.
Yeah. Well, we're only allowed to guess the names of pop cultural artifacts, so I
Yes.
guess the name of a movie. Is that correct, though?
No.
Oh.
1921.
No, 1916. So Nathan
I almost
was
just did 1915 to do the closest.
you
without
should
going
have.
over. Yeah.
You would have won.
Yeah, I would have won.
If you'd prices rated it.
Yeah. I would have said, "Come on down, Jake.
Well,
We're gonna-
the
with
$10,000
Roald-
is
yeah.
mine.
Wish I had a candy bar or something to give you, but I don't.
This would have been a good episode where
A
for us all
Wonka bar
to eat
would have been
candy.
great. Yeah.
I know. I really want a Wonka bar. Those
You want to just like pause the
marshmallowy
recording and go get some Wonka bars?
Yeah, let's just go get some Wonka.
Let's do it. And we're back.
These are really good.
Mm.
Either of you guys get a golden ticket?
Nope. Brandon, what's that in
Not
your
Tom.
mouth?
You ate
Oh,
the
man,
golden
it's-
ticket?
What's left of the golden ticket? You think he'll take it?
And what else? A tire?
Yeah.
Brandon, did you eat another car?
I did, Nathan.
You gotta stop eating cars,
But I
man.
thought the mud that was all over it was chocolate. And it wasn't.
But you didn't stop.
But it didn't stop. I got a problem.
Well, you won't have to digest that tire because it was stuck in your gaping maw.
That's right.
And if that's not a t-shirt, then our audience is smart.
They are smart.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, Roald
So
Dahl.
we've so far determined that he was born in 1916.
He was.
He was of Norwegian descent.
Like he came from the land of Norwegia.
Well, his father and his mother did. They were immigrants to Wales. And his father moved to Wales, and then he met his mother there, and they were both from Norway, so they said, hey, let's get married. His dad wanted to move to Wales partly because he thought that a British education was one of the best that you could get in the world. And so he wanted all his children to go to British schools, and actually that was one of the worst experiences of Roald Dahl's life.
Yeah, don't say.
Yeah, he had awful experiences, especially at Repton School. And later he would say that...
I would have figured he was a man who loved his childhood and loved authority figures.
Well, he's strange because... And one of the things I was reading said that all of his books has this layer of both sort of a warm sentiment to it. So the BFG, for example, or even Willy Wonka. Like Willy Wonka's got this childlike wonder to him, and there's an overall warmth towards Charlie and his family, right? But then there's all this there's this layer of the grotesqueness too of life. And it's because you get it from his childhood in multiple ways. One, he went to these boarding schools and had awful experiences with being caned and beaten by teachers and abused and by the older boys at the school. So he just didn't have a good experience at these boarding schools. He wasn't a stellar student, and he also showed absolutely no interest in writing while he was at school, though he did love to read. One of his favorite authors was Charles Dickens. Surprise, surprise, given some of the strange characters he comes up with.
Yeah, and the names of the strange characters.
So, and also, I mean, he was British, so
Yeah.
they kind of just love their Dickens over there. Anyways, no, not very good experiences with school. He would later on say something like it was foundational to his stories. He didn't understand. It always surprised him, the brutality of some of these older boys and these teachers and how they could just get away with it. And so a lot of his stories are taking these sort of villainous adult figures, the ants in
James and the Giant Peach.
or even any of the parental figures in Charlie and the Chocolate
Mrs. Trumbull and
Yep.
Matilda.
taking these figures like that and then having them be absurdly villainous, but then having the world allow the children that they're abusing to eventually win and give them their just desserts, right? And so he's able to kind of wiggle his way into the children's imagination, and that he can take this terrifying world of the adults and then also the wonders of these other worlds that he's creating and mix them together to have both this wonderful fantasy world that has this dark grotesqueness to us, but the grotesqueness always loses in the end. So in the BFG, you have the other giants. Their project is to go out and eat children in London, right? And so, yeah. A lot of this comes from his Norwegian influence because his family would still go back to Norway during the summers, and he had wonderful experiences in the countryside of Norway, fishing, hearing the Norwegian fairy tales. A lot of people think that some of the grotesqueness comes from the Norwegian love of the dark fairy tale, like gremlins and trolls, things like that. Even though as I was listening and reading about this, somebody said people always think that's like foundational to like the Norwegian psyche. And so maybe that's where it came from, this tortured, depressed psyche. And either he or somebody said, no, actually, Norwegian fairy tales are that way because it's so boring to be a Scandinavian. They have to think of something to be interesting. And so they do it with their fairy tales. Anyways, I thought that was fun.
That is interesting.
But anyway, so he would go there. So he'd have actually happy moments in his childhood. And you would think that given the sort of stories he writes, that he might have had an unhappy home life, but that's actually not the case. His father and mother were good parents. His father died, though, when he was young. He died of pneumonia, and his father died of pneumonia shortly after his sister, who was 7 at the time, died of appendicitis.
Oh, man.
And so one thing I was listening to said that Roald Dahl was pretty sure his father, because his father died like within 3 months of his sister, just gave up because he wanted to, this daughter in particular was his favorite, and he wanted to go back to her. And so this really defined his childhood as well. So you had the death and the darkness, the heaviness of that, which kind of gets at why he's so sympathetic to Charlie, right? I mean, you really get a feeling that he is tender. I mean, I think it's pretty fair to say that Roald Dahl kind of identifies himself with Willy Wonka, right? And he's very tender towards Charlie and judges these other children rightly. Anyways, so he had a fairly happy, like I said, he had a fairly happy home life, tortured with school. He hated school. So it was no surprise that as soon as he graduated, the British version of high school at the time, he didn't want to go to university. He wanted to go and explore the world. So actually one of his first things that he did was he went off on a science expedition and kind of toured. I forget where it was exactly that he went. He went to Newfoundland with the Public Schools Exploring Society. And then in 1934, he joined the Shell Petroleum Company.
Nice.
So he was an oil man. And finally, he entered into one of the most famous parts of his life. So he did all these things. He got to go to Kenya. He got to go to Africa, which, I mean, I don't know why I said Kenya and then Africa. He got to go to Africa. And particularly, he got to go to Kenya. Little known country in Africa known as Kenya.
I also got to go to China and Asia.
Yeah. Wells.
Wells?
Yeah, Wells is Wells. Isn't
Well, I mean, every oil man has to go to Wells, right?
Oh, man, let's just shut the podcast down right now. Woohoo! We're funny, guys. What? What did you say?
I said we are funny. I was just agreeing with you.
I'm glad you're agreeing with me.
Yep.
All right, so this is in 1939. He's in Africa, and what happens in 1939?
World War II.
World War II, that's right. And so we get into one of the most famous parts of his life is when he joins the RAF. It's the Royal Air Force, and this is...
It doesn't stand for Luftwaffe?
It doesn't stand for Luftwaffe, no.
Just checking.
Yeah. He started out when he entered into what was called the King's African Rifles and helped train and oversee a group of Askari men still in Africa. But eventually he would end up in the Royal Air Forces and was actually... which is kind of fun, fast-tracked through learning how to fly a plane because the Royal Air Force, they were being, if you know anything about the early parts of World War II, they were having their Howard Zinns handed to them. Was that on the other podcast?
That was on the other podcast,
Anyways, I'm glad I'm referencing back to that so much. Pay us money and you can hear the wonders of it.
Right. You can't
the riches, the wonderful riches. It's a veritable Bookening in the Chocolate Factory.
It is. There is a...
So much there.
You'll get to see those
So
cows
much.
whipped to make churned butter, whipped butter.
Wow.
Wow.
That's a part of the book I was surprised
It's about like that. Yeah.
yeah.
I was surprised that part actually made it into the Tim Burton movie. How did they allow that? Whipping the cows?
Yeah.
I don't know. How did PETA not get upset at that?
I assume they didn't actually whip cows.
Well, I mean, but still, even referencing it, I was surprised. Anyways, I'm glad we had that aside.
Quality aside.
He was fast-tracked.
Yes.
He was fast-tracked through this flying program, and depending on who you listen to, he either was flying a plane within 7 hours of being trained how to fly a plane, or it took a year. And this is a lot of what you run into with sort of this period of his life, is the fact that he would tell the stories later on, and he was a storyteller, which also meant that he was a liar, and would often make the stories more interesting.
Yeah.
And so whether it was really that fast or not, I don't know. All I can say is that even if it was just a year and the amount of training that he got, it was still very fast to be behind a plane and sent into battle. And he became a flying ace, which I think is supposed to be fairly impressive. From what I have understood, it's when you shoot down a certain number. I don't know the amount. Maybe Fat Alplane can tell us one day. I bet he knows.
Probably does.
That was also on the other.
Was that on the other episode?
I think we should say hi to Fat Alplane before this episode is done. People have been.
I mean, we're talking about airplanes. I kind of hear his engines. I think he might be, but it takes him a while to get over.
Yeah. He is.
So
he's not thin. Alplane after all.
But he is really good at segues.
Yeah.
So maybe he'll help us segue.
Again, all references that you can get behind the paywall.
Yeah, but you got to pay us for that.
You got to pay for them.
We hold the good stuff for pay. Anyways, we were in the RAF, right? And he became a flying ace. He was fairly successful there. And then on one mission, he was flying back to the base and it got late and he couldn't find the landing strip and he ran low on fuel and he crashed in the desert.
That's not good.
That's not good. This is important for two reasons. One, this would be the basis of his first published work when he retold this story later on. Two, it temporarily blinded him and gave him severe head trauma.
That's too bad.
Oh.
And a way, again, that he would play off of later in this kind of mystique of who Roald Dahl is. He would say that this is what unlocked his genius. And some people say, yeah, that might be true because actually damage like that can actually
Change the way
your
think.
brain chemistry. Yeah.
Some people also think this is just him being humorous because there are things, even his letters that he wrote early on to his mother and some published pieces at his school where he went, like some satire that he did, show that he was at least interested in a good writer. Not interested in a good writer. He was a good writer.
He's like, Bill Shakespeare, am great. I don't know how to write this sentence.
Apparently, I don't know how to
Somebody
speak
whacked
language
me
either.
on the head.
I need to be whacked on the head.
I need to be whacked on the head. And by the way, let me just say, I assume you're going to get to this, but I think some of what you're talking about, the fact that he had a cynical sense of humor and was a provocateur, is probably what we can file some of the later anti-Semitism and stuff like that under, is he was just kind of a crank that liked to say crazy things.
Yeah, actually, we were about to get to that reputation because that really develops when he came to America as a diplomat. But yes, and some people actually tie that back to his head trauma because it possibly allowed him to be less inhibited in ways that he wouldn't have been before that. Which, I mean, there is precedent for that sort of thing too.
Sure.
So,
Yep.
and that he was able to write stories and talk about things that other people wouldn't want to. Somebody else would have been much softer with these children in Willy Wonka and not had them have potentially horrible fates. So being pulled in the taffy, well, it's not the taffy puller in the book. It's the something else. They make it taffy puller in the Johnny Depp movie.
Is it not a taffy puller for
Oh, it was a taffy puller.
Is it taffy puller? It
Yeah.
could be.
for Mike TV?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's some kind of puller.
It is a
he's gonna
puller.
get pulled.
Yeah. Anyways, you would think that would be enough to get him a leave out of the army, but it wasn't. Instead, as soon as he showed signs of being better, even though he still had severe headaches, they put him back in a plane.
Wow, catch 22.
And he took place in the Battle of Athens, which was a little known part of World War II that almost became another Dunkirk, where they had to get British troops out of Greece as quickly as they could because the Germans were coming with the Italians and had them trapped, and 30,000 troops were lost. It was pretty violent and bloody. and a big loss for Britain. And as soon as this was over, though, he began to have more headaches and some blackouts, and so they finally did decide, we're going to give you medical leave. He was actually kind of depressed because he wanted to stay in. He felt like he hadn't done his duty. Given the nature of his accident, he didn't really feel like he had done enough yet. Even though in the Battle of Athens, apparently he was in a fighter plane, and he says that the planes were coming at him so fast that there just seemed to be enemy planes coming out of nowhere. So, and there was another famous flying ace that was with him that was shot down and killed. And so the fact that he survived the war as a fighter pilot, it was God's protection of him. I mean, everybody else, he should have died. Statistically, if you were in the Royal Air Force at the beginning of World War II, your odds of living beyond a couple of weeks were very low. And the fact that he made it through the crash in the desert and the Battle of Athens is, I think that 80-90% of his platoon died in that battle. So anyways, after that, he goes back home to Britain for a while, and he sees his mom and his family, and through them, he's introduced to this fairly high-ranking officer. Somebody's having a seizure over here. Anyways, and this guy likes Roald Dahl and thinks that he would be, because one thing I've forgotten to mention about him is that he's 6'6". He has that Norwegian blood. So he's very tall, and in his uniform, he's dashing, and actually, after he had his severe accident, he had to have plastic surgery to his nose, and the nurses said it actually improved his appearance.
Nice.
So they decide to send him over to America as a diplomat. And one of the goals that he had over there, he went to the British Embassy, and he was supposed to be the assistant air attaché. Part of his goal was to help improve the British image in America with speeches and to kind of counter the negative appearance of Britain, because America was at that point where they were trying to decide whether or not to really jump headfirst into the war or not. And so Britain...
So Churchill's still in power.
Okay. They're trying to... Yeah. And so this is when he gets into a part of his history that a lot of people are really interested in and fascinated by. He's bored with his work as an ambassador, but eventually learns of the work of someone called William Stevenson, who's, well, I guess the only way, the easiest way to put it is he's a spy. He's in the early versions of MI6, and this is the early days of the CIA too. And actually, there's a whole fascinating history. I was listening to a book on Roald Dahl and the spies, and apparently they were into code names. So this guy, Spy Master William Stevenson, was known by the code name Intrepid. And they had a particular name for their group, which was actually a reference to, what's the street where Sherlock Holmes was? Baker Street. The Baker Street Boys. Apparently, Sherlock Holmes had this group of boys he could draw from that would bring him information. Yep. Right.
I remember that.
And so they called them the Baker Street Boys. And so what they would go out and do is so Ian Fleming was a part of this. These guys, as they developed influence in America, they would also bring that information back to William Stevenson, who would then send it on to Churchill. So they were a direct line to Churchill and that sort of information that they needed. And so he was a part of the espionage in America at the time. Depending on the story that you're listening to, these guys could be the bad guys or they could be the good guys. They were influential in starting the American CIA. And so, yeah, it's a pretty cool part of his history. And there's a lot out there that people can go and listen to. The book I was listening to, which is actually really good, is called, hang on, I can tell people right now because I actually recommend it. The Irregulars, Roald Dahl and the British Spy Ring in Wartime Britain.
That's awesome. So,
yeah, it's really fun. I haven't finished it yet, but it's good stuff. It's fascinating. And if you like that sort of thing, it's fun. I don't think for the podcast's sake, it's really worth going into it any more than just mentioning it. Right. But we can talk about it more later if you want to, but still. What is important for his writing career is the fact that while he was there, he did become friends with a guy named Charles Marsh, who was a Texas publisher and oil man. He had this whole series of newspapers that he oversaw. And at this time, he would kind of collect up-and-coming intellectuals and writers around him. And Roald Dahl was one of the guys that just became his friend because, he was a British diplomat, and his circle, therefore, was kind of the rich and famous Americans, those who were sympathetic to the war efforts. This guy, Charles Marsh, had sold off a lot of his newspaper interests at the time and was really kind of sitting in his office and helping direct subtly whether or not America would go into the war. Roald Dahl actually also became friends with the Roosevelts and was in the White House quite a bit. In fact, when he wrote his first children's book, Gremlins, which was almost immediately optioned by Walt Disney, he sent a copy to Eleanor Roosevelt, and she read it to her children in the White House, which is pretty fun. So how did he become a writer?
That is the question.
That is the question. It happened during the same period. It was during his early days at the embassy. A novelist named C.S. Forester, who I had actually never heard of until this point. Had you ever heard of him?
Yeah, what did he write?
He was known for, I'm an idiot. He wrote Horatio Hornblower.
Of course. I knew that name from something. Yeah.
So the not so famous. The famous C.S. Forester.
No,
we just didn't know his name.
I've never read a Hornblower novel, folks.
Anyways.
You guys ever read a Hornblower novel?
I have not.
Maybe we will if you tell us to, but
You can tell us to.
But especially if you sign up for $100.
I was about to say, but the only way you can make us is give us $100.
I just don't really care about those kinds of stories all that much.
Yeah.
But I like
I like Master and Commander or whatever.
I like that movie as far as it went, but I didn't need to watch it 6 times and devote my entire life to it like some people did. Anyway,
Well, it's also a novel series, right?
yes,
Yeah, that's what I was.
yes,
The movies. I like the movie. I've never read the books though. I've heard the books are good. People like them.
Yeah, the movie's good. I mean,
The movie's great.
Why they didn't do a sequel of it? I mean,
I think Russell Crowe kind of set himself on fire.
is that what happened?
did he get canceled?
I think it was right around that time. That's when he threw the telephone at his waiter or whatever.
Maybe it was the lesser of two evils.
Yeah. I'm guessing that's a joke.
It's a joke from the movie.
Oh.
Paul Bettany's character. It's a thing. I've only seen that movie once, and I remember that joke.
Remember the lesser of two evils? Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Hard to
don't.
forget.
I got that reference.
Yeah.
I'm like, never mind.
Did I miss a reference, Jake, today?
No.
I know I miss references sometime to Top
It's
Gun.
okay. It's okay. You always miss my Top Gun references, but that's okay.
Folks, I've been working on getting Jake's Top Gun references more so that we can leave them in.
You just need to watch the movie sometime.
Yeah, the one thing I refuse to do is actually rewatch Top Gun. As much as I like seeing hot guys play volleyball or whatever it is.
Yeah, the Tom Cruise Maverick movie is going to hit this summer. Excuse me. It's going to hit this summer, and we're going to have to watch it for Sanity at the Movies.
All right, there you go. At that point, I will watch the original Top Gun.
There we go.
Speaking of Top Guns, though, Brandon is tops in his field of
Talking about this thing.
gunning down ideas.
All right, let's gun these ideas down right now. We got our sights on
You know,
C.S.
there's a much
Forester.
easier way in with the contextual Texan and the whole gun thing.
Oh, right. Yeah,
No,
Brandon
this
has
is great
guns.
right now. Right now, we've got our sights on. We've got C.S. Forester. He's the enemy plane right now. We've got him locked in. We're going to start firing.
Right.
Take him down, Nathan. There he goes. He's fallen. He's fallen. And so how he fits into this story is he had been asked by, he was working for the British Ministry of Information. And
Don't
he
you
was,
like Brandon's glasses, Jake?
They're really nice. I've been liking them the whole time.
I
yeah.
have two.
they're actually prescription now. I've got to wear them all the time.
That's a prescription.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you can take them off. Is your doctor pointing a gun at your head? Is he in this room right now?
She's the invisible man, and yes, she is.
Your
not
doctor is the
driving.
invisible, is
Well,
a
man.
female invisible man?
Yeah. She follows me around at all times. And if I even pretend to take them off, she'll shoot me.
That's a dedicated doctor.
That is. It's terrifying.
Seems like she's violating the Hippocratic. They're more like the hypocritical oath. Oh, sorry. Please don't shoot me, female male doctor.
You're kind of towing the line here, Nathan. Just pretend I never even mentioned it.
Brandon, you keep getting off track. You're talking about C.S. Forester. Let's do this.
He was in the British Ministry, blah, 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 blah. He was British Ministry of Information. Every time I'm talking about these organizations, I keep thinking of like Harry Potter. The British Ministry of Information. I mean, she did a good job making that feel British.
She knows how to capture British bureaucracy.
Yes. Anyways, he was writing propaganda for the Allied cause. And what he wanted to do was show the Americans the heroism of the war that they were missing out
You like
on.
Brandon's shirt?
And
Not
so
especially.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, it's
Yeah.
if maybe if I button this button here.
Well, I know Henleys are really popular, but I'm just personally not a fan of the Henley style. Brandon is a big fan of Henley style.
I got a lot of
shirts and
Henleys. Or
t-shirts.
maybe my wife is a fan of the Henley style.
That's possible.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, your job is to please your wife, not
It is.
please Jake and Nathan. Now
Yeah.
stop getting.
Anyway, so
sidetracked.
here he comes. He comes into Roald Dahl's office. Roald Dahl's bored. This is during the early part of when he was sent to America. I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but he didn't want to go because this was seen as the thing that people who were trying to dodge war did, was go to other countries and be diplomats. Of course, he had good reason because of his medical leave,
Right.
but he just felt disappointed. He really wanted to be fighting. So this guy comes in and he says, "Hey, I've heard you have this awesome story about crashing in the desert. I want to tell your story. Can we get dinner and you can tell it to me?" And so they do. Roald Dahl, though, by the end of dinner says, "You know what? I'm not going to get through it all. Let me just write it down for you and I'll send it to you." And he does. He writes it down. He sends it to this guy, C.S. Forrester. C.S. Forrester reads it and is like, "This is really good." He sends it to the publisher without changing anything. The publisher likes it. They publish it and they pay him $1,000, which at the time was quite a bit, for the rights to publish this story.
The Dahl.
Yeah. And that's the start of his career. He said up to that point, he had never really thought of being a writer. He wasn't especially gifted as a writer at school.
Is that the best fall backwards into being a famous author story that we've had in the Bookening?
I think
Feels
it's
like
one
it.
of the only fall back into being. I mean, Ernest Hemingway, those guys would have killed for an opportunity like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I
And-
mean, go to war and be a reporter or something like that was a strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, all those guys did stuff like that. But
Yeah.
This guy, he just has an awesome story. And then people find out, oh, he actually has a really great writing voice too. And that's the beginning of his career. Shortly after that is when he writes one of his first children's books, The Gremlins. And like I said, sends it on to the Roosevelts. They love it. Disney wants to option it. And really his career, it's really funny because you have these guys like Hemingway or Fitzgerald. I've been reading The Editor of Genius.
Mhm.
Those guys struggled and fought to be the writers that they are remembered as today. Right. And they were just tortured by it. And then you have Roald Dahl at the same time as them, a couple decades later, but still, he doesn't have to try. His writing
kinda
career
tossing the stuff off and-
just kind of takes off. And yeah, really, there's not a whole lot. So that's his life during the war, and that's when his writing career takes off. That's kind of the most interesting period of his life. After that, he eventually marries after the war, and after his writing career is taking off. I read one thing where he said he got $1,000 for this piece, and he's like, well, maybe after the war's over, I can make a career of this writing thing. And then he does. And famously at first, he didn't want to be known as a children's writer, but then by the end of his life, he actually was a huge proponent of children's writing and kind of embraced being Roald Dahl. He did get into, so let's take one step back because his personality, his character that you mentioned earlier, he was known for being a very almost always sarcastic while he was an ambassador or a diplomat. He was known for being the kind of guy who would just say what he thought, and he could often be cruel with what he would say. And so these things are true. But then other things that I've read said that those are also blown out of proportion, at least by the end of his life. Yes, he was sarcastic. So for example, there was this one director who wanted to make a documentary about him. And he was told by all these people, you're going to have to go talk to this guy, but just know he's going to probably shoot you down and hate you and make you feel little and be mean. He said he went to Roald Dahl and he said, yeah, he was sarcastic, but he actually was lovely and fun to be around and generous with his time. And one example of this would actually be with Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, or Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. At first, the Oompa Loompas were African, right? The NAACP filed a complaint and they were concerned, like if they were in the movie, that people would associate this with slavery. Roald Dahl understood what they were saying and said, yeah, let's change it. So they went back, they took out all references to Africa and took out the pictures where they were Africans. So, I mean, it wasn't like he was an unreasonable, crotchety old man who just wouldn't listen to anybody or be thoughtful towards others. Mm-hmm. He was a very good father. After the war, he married an American actress named Patricia Neal, and they had 5 children: Olivia, Chantal, Theo, Ophelia, and Lucy.
Wow.
And actually, so his life is actually fairly difficult Sorry, I got distracted for a minute. Yeah, so he has these 5 children. Tragedy strikes with 2 of his children. One, Theo, at the age of 4 months, was struck in his baby carriage by a taxi.
Wow.
And suffered from, what do they call it, encephalitis, swelling of the head, which actually, to show you just kind of who he was as a man and as a father, the tube that they put in Theo to help drain some of the fluids, he was like, this doesn't seem to work. But he was someone who was always fascinated by toys and things like that. And he had this little motorized airplane. And he said, but the tubes in this airplane never seem to clog up. But this tube in my son's that's helping drain these fluids from my son is always clogging. He's like, what's the problem? So he says, well, why don't we get together a neurosurgeon and a guy who makes toy engines and see if they can't come up with something. And so he got them together, and actually they came up with a drain that was like put in 3,000 children and helped this condition. It was actually called the Dahl tube or something like that.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so he was a very caring father and dedicated to his children. The other tragedy is that his daughter, Olivia, died of measles at the age of 7. And this apparently was very devastating to him as well. The same age that his sister had died when his father died almost immediately after of pneumonia. And sadly, this is also tied to what caused Dahl to give up the last vestiges of his Lutheranism because he was so devastated. It left him what he called limp with despair after the death of his daughter. And he gave up the last vestiges of his Christianity because of that. And then his wife, shortly after that, when their fifth child, Lucy, was born, she suffered from severe aneurysms. And so he lived a very difficult life with the people that he loved. And yet, according to them and according to others around him, was a fairly warm, loving man to those who knew him well. He could be very businesslike and to the point, and could be, for those who've ever read his books, unsurprisingly sarcastic and sharp with some of his wit. And I think that's what gave him the reputation. But as far as I read and as far as everything I listened to, I don't see any signs that he was like a cruel man. Does that make sense? He could be cruel in what he would say to certain people, and you kind of think that we're probably the people at times who deserved it. But still.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, if you met Roald Dahl, would you want him to be anything but sarcastic? Of course, he should be sarcastic. That's the best version of Roald Dahl.
Yeah. And so just a couple other things here. All right. Apparently, these are rules that he applied to every children's book. One, just add chocolate. You may have read this. Did you read this?
I don't think so.
Adults can be scary. Bad things happen. Revenge is sweet. Keep a wicked sense of humor. Pick perfect pictures. Films are fun, but books are better. And food is fun. Those are the 8 rules that he applied.
This book definitely, I think, applies all of them.
Yeah, and I think most of his books have that. So, as far as Charlie and the Chocolate Factory goes, apparently when he was young, at one of the schools, Cadbury would send boxes of chocolate to the school. And that's one of the ways that he thought, man, when I get older, I really want to help Cadbury decide on flavors and things like that. Gobstoppers were also a very popular children's candy at the time. And so these would come in later to be influential for Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Apparently in early drafts, Charlie was actually supposed to be a young black boy. But one of his editors convinced him that it would sell better if he changed it. So again, more evidence that he's not the cruel racist that people think he is. That it works. I mean, it makes sense that that's who he would have wanted to have been at first, because he's this down and out boy that nobody expects to win, right?
Yeah,
and
makes sense.
The one.
Yeah. By the way, the other thing that I read was that there were chocolate wars going on in his childhood, that these big Cadbury and the companies were stealing each other's secrets. And that was kind of one of those things that was in the news when he was a boy for whatever reason.
Yeah.
So
apparently this book went through various changes. At first, it was supposed to be 10 children who won, and it was going to be a lot more
terrible murders.
Yeah, or potential murders. There were going to be some pretty.
We saw them all walk away, Nathan.
It is interesting that the Gene Wilder movie actually makes it the most dark, because he says they're going to be okay, but you don't actually see it. I think in the Tim Burton version you see it, but it was interesting to me that in the book we actually got to see them. They all survived. Yeah,
except for Johnny Depp's presentation of Willy Wonka. That Tim Burton movie's a little bit more faithful.
I hate Johnny Depp's Willy Wonka, but the movie itself, the Charlie Bucket and the Mr. Bucket, like all that stuff's real good.
The whole feel of the movie, except for Willy Wonka, is much closer to the book.
Yeah, I really like the Gene Wilder movie. I mean, who doesn't like the Gene Wilder movie? But
yeah. Well, I'll tell you who didn't like the Gene Wilder movie. And that might actually be a good transition into baggage. Roald Dahl hated it.
Did he?
Yeah, he absolutely hated it. And actually,
too sentimental.
It was because of that movie. He just said it didn't stay faithful enough to the source, and he was mad and angry at what Disney did to it. And so it was Disney, right?
I don't think so.
Or was it not Disney?
I don't know.
If it was maybe a subsidiary, but I could be crazy.
Yeah. Anyways, he was very upset by it and refused, he said, until he died, to let anybody do a film adaptation of any of his movies. So
they certainly rectified that once he was dead.
Yeah.
That's not true. Is he not dead when The Witches came out?
That so it may be that he just lied.
He made a
Yeah.
They throw money at people.
So yeah, and then
That's right. I forgot. Sorry. This is very important. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, funded by the Quaker Oats Company. Actually,
Really?
They wanted to sell chocolate. That's why that movie was made. So it's actually got one of the weirder distribution. Paramount distributed it, but in terms of who put up the money for the Gene Wilder movie, it's one of the weirder stories of all funding in movies. It was basically created so that they could make a Wonka line of chocolate bars, which is they did
Still
and
exists to this day.
Yeah, I think
still buy Everlasting Gobstoppers and
Nerds, I think, are maybe a
Wonka
down the
can.
line Wonka product.
Yeah.
We should look it up.
Yeah. Wonka.
So just to wrap things up on my end.
Yeah.
Yeah. And apparently, so I'm finally looking at the Wikipedia page here for him because I don't do that for everything, people.
Yeah, no.
Anyways.
Bottle Caps, Everlasting Gobstoppers, Fun Dip, Laffy Taffy, Nerds, Pixie Sticks, Runts, Spree, Sweet Tarts, Sweet Tart Chewy Sours, Sweet Tarts Soft and Chewy Ropes, Wonka Ice Cream, Mix-Ups, and Randoms.
So basically, like a lot of candy that I loved when I was about 11 and no candy that I like now.
And a bunch of other candies that you might remember from when you were a kid, but don't exist anymore.
Well, like Pixie Sticks, Laffy Taffy, those are like my swimming pool candy. Like
And swimming pool candy is exactly right.
get
That's
off
right.
the water slide, go to the little concession stand.
That's right, and that's the kind of thing that you get.
Pay $2 or $3.
And some of it's just Halloween candy, like Bottle Caps is Halloween candy, Laffy Taffy is Halloween candy.
Yeah.
But Fun Dip is like ballpark or swimming pool candy.
Yeah.
And Pixie Sticks definitely.
Yeah, totally.
Swimming pool candy.
Park candy, yeah.
But none of
Red
those.
Spree, Sweet Tarts.
I don't think you could pay me to eat any of those. I mean, you could pay me if you had a lot of money. But
you could definitely pay me to eat these. If you want to pay me to eat these, please.
you
pay
could
me.
you
I'll
could
eat
not
them.
ask me for free to eat any of those. I don't think.
It
Fun
depends
Dip's
on the
fun.
mood. Nerds, just a little bit, or Sweet Tarts, or even Spree.
I don't know what Spree is.
Runts, not so much. Spree?
Yeah, what's Spree?
It's a little hard shell candies like Sweet Tarts, but with a chewy center,
Oh,
but still a little bit sour.
They're good. They're fine. Yeah.
I think Sweet Tarts are better.
Oh, Sweet Tarts are better, yeah.
well, there you go.
So anyways, I guess the last thing I would say is that if people want to go and read about his anti-Semitism and racism and misogyny, apparently they can go to Wikipedia.
Well, I can talk about that real quick.
Yeah.
Because I have read the Wikipedia page. It's nothing really. I mean, I don't want to be a anti-Semite apologist, but basically he wrote an editorial late in his life, sometime in the 80s, against Israel. He did not like the state of Israel. And it was a pretty strongly worded letter or article that he wrote. And then there was some back and forth, and some people said he was an anti-Semite, but that was it. He had Jewish friends. His editor, I think, was Jewish. He liked Jewish people in real life. He was also one of those guys who, of his time, would talk about a race as if they had characteristics. Like people used to, you remember when people used to do that?
Oh.
So
That's awful.
you can find quotes where he says, the Jewish character leads to this or does this. And it's not always pleasant, but I mean, we could name a half a dozen authors that we've talked about that have done worse things or similar things. G.K. Chesterton certainly had stronger things to say about the German character, the Jewish character, than Roald Dahl ever said, for example. So I think he's just he's a man of his time. I think it'd be unfair to paint him as any kind of special or exceptional racist, and probably unfair to paint him as a racist at all. He also, I think in one of his early children's books, there's some Jewish character who an earthquake happens and the character runs to count his money or to make sure that it isn't stolen or something like that. Oh no. I can just feel myself getting canceled. And then I can actually feel the canceling happening right now. There are police showing up. They're outside the studio. I'm going directly to jail as soon as I finish this. But as long as I'm already going to jail, I will say the charges of sexism, there's really nothing there. He never said anything bad or did anything bad. The only reason people say he's a sexist is because they want something to lump in with the racism. And so they say the bad guys in his books tend to be these domineering, fat old lady characters like the ants in James and the Giant Peach, or like Mrs. Gloop, or but I don't know. He seems like, to me, or Mrs. Trumbull and Matilda. Sure, okay, he didn't
Yeah,
like.
'cause all the dads in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory are really wonderfully uptight.
Yeah, exactly. He seems like a pretty equal opportunity hater of humanity, as far as I can tell. As I listened to about half of Charlie in the Glass Elevator after this, and that one's really weird.
Is it?
They go to space.
Nice.
Like the elevator, I think they pick up the grandparents in the book, and somebody like hits the wrong lever, and then they blast into space, and they come to the International Space Hotel, where everyone's excitedly putting together the first space hotel, and all the astronauts assume that the glass elevator is extraterrestrials. And then we cut to Earth, and the president of the United States is busy playing with his Tinker Toys or something like that. As his governess, as the vice president, who's a female who was his governess, actually runs the country.
Huh.
And there's all this goofy political satire as they scramble to try and figure out
What to do about the aliens?
what to do with this international incident. It's really weird.
Is it good?
Yeah, it was funny. It lacked the, this might sound trite to say, but it lacked the moral dimension of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. As silly and as sick, you might argue, as it is, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory kind of feels like it's about something, whereas this book just felt like he was having fun.
Yeah.
But it was weird. Anyway, I don't remember why I said any of that, but except for just to illustrate. There again, I guess the vice president is a woman, and she's domineering, and
Yeah.
so he had a certain kind of domineering, villainous woman type that he liked to go back to, but you'd have to get rid of a lot of great authors. P.G. Wodehouse would certainly
Dickens.
lose out. Dickens.
C.S. Lewis.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't think that there's all that much to it. Please don't cancel me, internet. Or cancel
You already
me.
canceled.
Yeah, I'm already. But it's just one of those things. People like to take these beloved public figures, especially the ones associated with childhood or innocence, and find some kind of dirt on them. I don't think there's really much there for Roald Dahl.
It's like all the things you see about Shel Silverstein.
I don't know anything about Shel Silverstein.
He actually was pretty crazy.
Was he bad?
But, yeah.
There you go. Ooh, was there anything else we need to talk about context-wise?
No, I think that's it.
Oh, man, there was something else that I wanted to say, but I don't remember what it was.
You'll just have to remember it
Where
on the
does
next
Charlie
episode.
fit in his oeuvre?
Say what?
Where does Charlie fit?
Good question.
Let's find
I
out.
think it's mid.
It's 60s, right? So
Yeah.
that sounds like it would be mid.
We can just go right down here. Oh, I guess one other thing that was fun to point out is that he wrote the screenplay for Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Yes. Yes, he did.
Did he write the songs?
No.
Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, strangely a Ian Fleming story.
Yep.
Weird.
And I think he also wrote the screenplay for a James Bond movie for You Only Live Twice.
Another part of his writing career was writing little strange horror stories.
Yes, that's what I wanted to mention. That was the other thing. Roald Dahl, a somewhat perverse, so you don't want to go too far. He wrote some pretty sexually explicit stories, but some of his best dark crime stories are quite good. There's a very famous one which was adapted into a Alfred Hitchcock Presents episode that a lot of people know and have heard of or have read, a kind of a cultural touchstone in its small way, which is called A Lamb to the Slaughter, about a jilted wife who bashes her husband over the head with a frozen leg of lamb and then cooks it and serves it to the detectives as they're searching for the murder weapon. Spoiler alert, but pretty famous. Yeah, so he wrote a lot of macabre stories. If, as I have, folks, you have read omnibus editions of, collections of the dark fantastic and of 20th century grotesque and weird and dark and crime stories, Roald Dahl's one of the frequently anthologized guys that shows up, and his adult stories are, when not explicitly bad, quite good. He had a nice line in the dark, macabre, dry kind of Alfred Hitchcock sort of thing, which I guess you'd expect he would, actually, because he had that in his children's books as well.
Yep.
The other short story I remember was a really weird one about how the trees were screaming as we cut them down or something like that.
Yikes.
And so it wasn't like an ecologically forward-thinking Save Planet Earth kind of story. It was just a weird story about trees screaming. So, Roald Dahl, a good writer of the dark fantastic in his way.
Yes.
So, any more context or?
No, that's it.
All right. Well, I think we gotta shout out some patrons then, guys. Why don't you guys decide which one of the 6 children, whether it's Veruca Salt, Augustus Gloop, let's see if I can do this, Mike TV, Charlie Bucket.
6 children.
I said 6. I don't even know if that's the right number. Maybe it's 5. Yeah. So I'm just missing one.
Violet.
Violet Beauregard. Beauregard. Which Violet Beauregard, by the way, her punishment seems a little, or her sin seems a little bit smaller than the other ones. She just liked to chew gum, but I guess he thought gum chewing was really annoying. Anyway, we can litigate that next week.
Tim Burton does a good job making her worse.
Yes. Isn't she just kind of...
She's like one of those
more mouthy and... Yes, that's right.
Yeah. And her mom's driving it, kind of like one of those...
uber yuppie soccer mom.
Yeah, that's making a comment on that sort of thing.
Yes, I do remember that. The evil kids are all pretty... Well, both versions have good evil kids, I think. I don't know. We can talk about that next time. All right. Still trying to find our patrons here. All right, guys. So, which one of the children does Robert and Rhonda the Lovebirds remind you of, Brendan?
Of course, Charlie and the chocolate.
Charlie and the chocolate.
Yeah.
Okay. I like the chocolate. The artful Anthony Dodger. Jake.
Mike TV.
Yeah. That guy deserves to be taffy pulled. A Little Anthony's Cigar Store.
Augustus Gloop.
The immortal Chelsea E.
Veruca Salt.
Jimmy Beam and Little Annie
This
Oakley.
is really not flattering to our patrons.
Yeah,
I
this
just want you to know.
You know what? Let's compare them. Let's do something new.
Wait.
Yeah.
Just keep going. I got it.
Okay, you got an idea?
Hmm.
All right. Where was I? Lily of the Valley?
Dracula.
Is who you would compare her to. Okay. Yeah, that's much more flattering. Good.
That's a character from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Right?
Yeah. What happens to Dracula at the end?
It's awful.
Yeah.
They really didn't deserve it.
Yeah. No. Fell into that garlic press, I think. Where was I? Andrew and Esther the Lovebirds.
Gonna have to say Frankenstein.
Another great character from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Mm-hmm.
Although...
Immortalized behind you.
Yeah, there's a Frankenstein poster right behind me, folks. Willy Wonka's experiments with the undead. Not one of the more savory parts of the book, but that's all right. David's Mighty Men Trucking.
Dracula.
John and Jill and Little Baby Max.
Frankenstein.
Yeah. I hate to say it, but it's true. Jay and Katie, who are cold and love cheese, and also C.S. Lewis, including Till We Have Faces. Let's be real.
Dracula.
Fairy Princess of Wonder and Happiness, Mother Beth.
Frankenstein.
Yeah. Sorry. Consul Prime Adam.
Dracula.
Jeremy the Dark Hood of the Lord of Death.
Frankenstein.
And Nathan, not me.
Dracula.
Maya!
Frankenstein.
Yep. Brian the Bread Avenger, Judith the Ladies of Justice.
Dracula.
DJ Sammy G.
Frankenstein.
Benny and Danny Tiberius.
Dracula.
Eric and Catherine from Beyond Window
Frankenstein.
Breaks. Professor and Lady X.
Dracula.
Lavender's green, Dylan, lavender's blue. Lavender's green, Dylan, I love you too. Fun fact, I just said lavender's green, Dylan, lavender's glue without trying. It just came out that way.
Lavender glue.
Lavender glue. If you guys have never tried lavender glue, it smells great and your stuff falls apart. Noah Constrictor.
Frankenstein.
Maricheap.
Lavender.
Lavender, there you go. The Very Fragrant Maiden Chloe.
Frankenstein.
Anthony was cold and hates life, liberty, and the pursuit of cheese.
Dracula.
Yeah, Dracula was a dirty cheese hater, wasn't he? Jiu-Jitsu Jeffrey, the Texas Ranger.
Frankenstein.
I'm sorry, I'm not Roald Dahl. I don't want to make fun of cheese haters here.
Yeah, sorry to say, that sounds racist somehow.
Those dirty cheese eaters. I don't know who that's racist against.
I don't know.
Let's not figure it out.
French.
French.
That's what I was going to guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aren't they cheese-eating surrender monkeys? Wasn't that a thing back in the day?
Sounds
I have
like
no
it.
idea what you're talking about, Nathan. But that sounds terrible.
You don't remember back when the French were eating cheese and surrendering all the time, like monkeys? It's a Simpsons line that groundskeeper Willie said that became part of the national discourse around 9/11. As I recall, as so many things did around the era of freedom
I
fries.
just remember freedom fries.
Yeah, it was the same. Some
Jeez.
op-ed guy used the line from The Simpsons, and it became kind of a meme in the pre-meme era. So there you go. Little history with Nate.
Dracula.
Frankenstein.
You guys make a fair point. Midnight Ninja Ellen.
Dracula.
Did I say Rachel? Which are the did I die?
Frankenstein.
Jay of Rack and Root.
Dracula.
I like that we're taking our time with this one. Sometimes we rush through these patrons, but I like that we're
I just love it
we're
so
taking
much.
our time. It's not like Brandon needs to drive 2 hours home to Bloomington or anything. Timothy, the writer at dawn.
Frankenstein.
Eric and Kate, the Camp Champ Kings, who are, let's not forget, lest we forget, warm, and they love bees.
Dracula.
And our good friend who sent us some wonderful art of David Copperfield as the sandworm. as one does. Matty, 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 Matman. I don't remember whether I said this on which side of the paywall, but if you want a T-shirt of David Copperfield as a sandworm, then all you have to do is
make your voice heard.
Make your voice heard.
Make it heard.
Yes, break the silence. Sweet Jamie Sunshine, another quality lady.
Dracula?
Yeah, probably. Tyler, the Keeper of Eternal Darkness, and Laura, the Keeper of Eternal Light.
Frankenstein.
Both of them, yeah. Cold Steel Cody.
Dracula.
Jacqueline, the Librarian Barbarian.
Frankenstein.
John Bombadilla Bomb Diggity, and Captain Tennille, his mate.
Dracula.
Saxophone Alex.
Frankenstein.
The other saxophone Alex and dubstep Danny.
Dracula.
Ryan, the Terror of Texas, and Eric of the Cream and Crimson, who are stuck in the cold police and cheeses. Ben Solo and Kylo Ren.
Dracula.
John, the Cosmic King of Chaos.
Frankenstein.
Matthew, the Mind Flavor or Flair, yeah.
Dracula.
Annie, are you okay? Get your gun.
Frankenstein.
Ow! All right.
That's my Michael Jackson. Woo!
Ow! It's like Michael Jackson stubbing his toe, maybe. All right. We got 2 new people to welcome.
Oh, boy.
Oh, yay.
And one of these is really interesting because it's actually a different patron who's giving money or just calling out this patron, which I wasn't aware was a thing that you could do. But hey,
apparently you can.
Give us money, and
you give us enough money, you can.
You give us enough money, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
So I can't say the name of the donor, but he kindly asked that we call out.
Oh, you said he. That eliminates 50% of the population, Nathan.
Or she.
Nope, too late.
Let's not be gendered, Brandon.
Is it Dracula?
It might be Dracula.
I knew it wasn't Frankenstein. That guy's a miser.
Are all girls Frankenstein and all boys Dracula?
I think so.
Yeah, I'm glad we've.
All girls are misers and all guys are generous.
Let's not.
Brandon just got himself
at the breakdown of our supporters here.
I just get myself canceled with you, Nathan.
Come on in the cancellation water.
Baby Yoda almost got himself canceled.
We ate those eggs. Genocide, man.
He ate those eggs.
Don't eat those eggs. Yo, Baby Yoda.
Don't eat the eggs, Baby Yoda.
Hey, Grogu, don't stop eating the eggs,
Stop eating the eggs, man. What you doing there, Baby Yoda?
Come on.
Ah, man, Baby Yoda, quit eating the eggs.
Hear me out. Should we do this bit for the next 5 minutes?
I think Jake really wants us to. You think Jake ever hears us talking and says, man, I am the CEO of all this? It just sort of shakes his head sadly.
No. I don't think that.
I don't think that.
Not for a second.
I think he nods his head proudly.
This is what I am paying big
Wraps
bucks
his
for here.
American flag around himself because he's always wearing one.
Yeah, it's not often wrapped around him, though.
No, I just wrap it around me.
Yeah, he just
tightly. Yeah.
So, the Valerie.
Ooh.
And Jake, we came up with a name for Valerie, but I'm having trouble remembering.
Flight of the Valerie. Exactly.
Flight of the Valerie.
Woo!
Hi, Flight of the Valerie. Are you picturing helicopters devastating a Vietnamese village? I know I am.
I was
not.
Are you picturing Wagner?
I was.
Talk about an anti-Semite.
Ubermensch.
What a mensch? Is that what you said?
Ubermensch.
Oh, I thought you said, what a mensch.
That's what Nietzsche thought when he looked at him. What a mensch.
What a mensch.
What a mensch.
He's the ultra mensch.
Don't eat those eggs.
Hey, Baby Yoda.
These are racist.
Don't eat those eggs, Baby Yoda. What are you doing, Baby Yoda? Oh, no. It's me, Mario.
It's me, Nietzsche Mario.
Select your eggs. Okay. Oh no, it's Fat Outplane.
Hey guys,
it's Fat Outplane. Welcome.
I'm here just in time. I've been flying this whole time, and it took me this long to get here. I'm not a fast plane, but I'm a fat plane.
Nope.
I take the S out of fast.
You take the S out of fast.
That's right, I do.
Fat Outplane. I never knew you were so funny.
Oh, yeah.
You take the AST out of fast and add the UNNY.
Boo. That's not as funny.
I'm laughing my
Fat Alplane liked it.
I'm laughing my propeller off.
Oh my.
Hey, we forgot about it. That's our other character. It's me, King Laugh.
King Laugh.
Hey, Fat Alplane.
How's it going, man? It's been way too long.
Everything is very funny, Fat Alplane.
We're getting the bookening canceled, man.
We hate Hawaiians.
And I hate women.
Hawaiian women are the worst.
Oh, you better believe it, brother.
All right,
Oh, my.
I'm canceling Fat Alplane.
No.
And King Laugh. No.
I'm glad they're gone.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Those guys are racist against Hawaiian women. And that's something we don't stand for on the Bookening.
No. Nope. I'm glad nobody ever makes it this far into the podcast.
They turned it off a long time.
Me too. All right. Hashtag. Me too. Great minds think alike.
We'll tell them differ.
Okay. Welcome, Flight of the Valkyries.
So,
We have somebody else still do it.
Yes, we've got one more.
oh man.
And his name is Josh.
I hope you got something for this, Nathan.
I didn't think.
Jumpin' Jehoshaphat.
Oh, that's awesome.
Jumpin' Jehoshaphat. Jumpin' Jehosh, you fat.
Yo,
That's
Josh.
so much better.
Yo, Josh, you're fat?
Yeah. Yo, Josh, you fat. Yo, Josh, you fat.
Josh, you're fat.
Oh,
Okay, we can't.
come on.
How about, yo, Josh, you're thin?
You need something more awesome than that.
Okay, how about,
We just sang Flight of the Valkyries to Valerie.
okay, what's another famous Wagner thing that Josh can be named after?
Thor.
Josh.
Thor Ragnar Josh.
Oh,
Thor Ragnar Josh isn't bad. I mean, it is terrible, but it's
pretty bad.
It's on par with some other ones. Okay, we can't settle for Thor Ragnar Josh.
That's fun to say.
Josh.
You're asking Josh to give us.
You know what, Josh? Would you like to be Thor Ragnar Josh? I think we'd enjoy that, but maybe that's too silly. So let us know if you're happy being Thor Ragnar Josh, or if you'd like to be. I need another.
the Joshua tree.
If you,
Yeah, which
or if you'd like to be the Joshua tree.
Oh, man.
Joshua tree is Josh and me.
Or if you'd like to be the Joshua tree, is Josh and me.
Josh.
So your options are Thor Ragnar Josh. The Joshua tree is Josh and me.
Jumpin' Jehoshaphat.
Jumpin' Jahash, you fat.
Josh, you fat. But PHAT.
Yeah,
That's okay, right?
yeah.
Right.
The Bookening is pro fat.
That's right. We are. Hand me another Wonka bar.
There you go, Brennan.
They just throw them to me like the seals get the fish. They just throw me Wonka bars like that.
Yep.
That's how we're going to pay Brandon if we ever get up to $2,000 a month.
We'll bounce one on his nose. Hold it.
It's like
Good
an Oompa-
context,
it's like an
Brandon.
Oompa Loompa.
Yeah.
Love free chocolate.
That's right, man. Those Oompa Loompas had their priorities straight.
Oh, you know what? The other interesting thing about this book is the bad kids get their free chocolate.
They sure do.
Yep.
But maybe they've learned a lesson or something. I don't know. We'll talk about it next time. All right, folks. Thanks for being with us. And Josh, don't you worry. If you don't like Thor Ragnar Josh, then we'll fix it right up next time. Just let us know.
Just let us know. Don't eat those eggs.
Don't eat those eggs, Baby Yoda.
No.
Brr.